be less crime, less terrorist acts, but it's through a means of negative peace, right? And this was going on since before 2022. It's just something that I noticed while reading up on this issue. So it says usually addresses violence between states and peace, sometimes by non-peaceful means. So what I noticed was happening, and was probably happening back in 2003 as well, is to combat the rebel groups. You can kind of take apart their support system, or you can prevent people from further joining in these groups and making it a larger faction of the population. At the end of the day, over 100,000 people are dying from this, and you have a lot of people that may even believe in the rebels' motives, but at the end of the day, their brother, their sister, their mother, father are dying, right? Which is why in this two-track diplomacy forum that we had, you even had the mothers speaking up against this, and a lot of people were just tired of the deaths, and at the end of the day, their sovereignty wasn't worth it. And so moving on to the next question, we have lessons learned from the simulation. Lessons learned from the simulation is, for myself, going into a situation and thinking that I know what I think already. I didn't want to go in and support the Russians just from today's world, right? But it's just what ended up occurring, because you look through the facts, and I saw a lot of ends justify the means actions, and personally I don't believe that, but I have to think through other perspectives. And that's why you have different IGOs, NGOs coming in, because they can provide different, perspectives on that. But for myself, ends don't justify the means, but I went in this thinking the underdog is who I'm rooting for, and then I ended up not rooting for them. So a huge lesson learned is go into situations eyes wide open and really try not to put any bias. We're always going to have some form of bias, but really try to separate myself and my country from these situations. And until you do that, I don't think that you can produce a successful means of conflict resolution if you don't have the correct, if you don't have an open mind through it. That's the biggest lesson learned. I didn't particularly love the person I was representing. And also reading through, the journalist, I thought sometimes you can see when people don't really believe in what they're putting forth as well. And with the journalists and a few others, again, I thought they were being too idealistic. And I think one of the biggest things that I'm learning through this is that larger scale conflicts, IGOs are not as effective as. So what do we do? And so that's why so much of this process had me thinking much deeper than just IGO level, because when you get to very large conflicts like this, I just don't believe that IGOs are nearly as effective, and that was backed up. And then a discussion of how things would be recommended to be done differently. So I wasn't knowing if this was referring to the simulation itself and the course, or if it was referring to I just didn't know if you were referring to simulation or the course. I would say suggestions for how this would be done is Russia not showing as large of a force. I feel like when the country itself, like it is still the same country, shows a large amount of force, it can come off, and I could be wrong, but it can come off as not trying to actually mend the conflict, and that can be more divisive in the population. At the end of the day, if Russia doesn't show a lot of force and also still doesn't grant independence, yet the Chechens still carry out these horrible acts, then what it can do is it can show that the rebels are the ones that are taking the lower ground, not the higher ground, but the lower ground. It's the Chechens that are doing this, and Russia can use that and say, we haven't been doing these atrocities, we haven't been killing these people, it's been the rebels. As far as the simulation itself, what could have been better? I believe sometimes I wanted to respond to different people, but I didn't have 150 words in me to respond to their particular thing. So maybe making it more conversational in the sense of, you know, let's interact with 10 different people or have 10 different responses, but no word limit on those responses, so it could be more of a conversational simulation. But other than that, I actually enjoyed reading the paper on the conflict itself and through the characters. The characters were hard to keep up with. I always had to reference back to them. But I wish there was more responses. Sometimes I would say stuff and I would never get a response on it, but I kind of wanted to respond to it if I didn't have to put 150 words and vice versa. So that might create some more interaction, because I don't feel like at the end of the day the simulation necessarily got very deep. So that concludes this, and I hope you enjoyed it, and that's all. Thank you.